we have to say while we draw breath. Distress caused this untimely death.
Break down the frames. Aye, we did that right enough. First, the Stockiners linked together peacefully, petitioned Parliament to regulate trade and stop people being robbed. But the rich hosier merchants had more friends in Parliament than the Stockiners, and nothing changed for them. You've got to remember, Parliament was just a joke then. You could only get elected if you went and bought it. But the Stockiners fought back, blacked up their faces, went out by night to break the broad frames that were ruining them. But the frames that made good quality clothes, they were never touched. Well, the owners fought back, hired thugs as guards, and many of them took a beating from the lads. And legends spread they were led by a general called Ludd. He was just made up to put fear of God into the owners. Most of the raids carried out by General Ludd were over Nottingham way, but some of our lads were in on it. Tommy Bacon and his crowd.
When Bonaparte was beaten at Waterloo and sent to St. Helena, the lads who'd fought for him weren't needed in the army or navy anymore.
They came home, and there were no jobs for them. The wounded joined the rest of the starving paupers, depending on the parishes, and the parishes hadn't enough money to feed them. And then, that volcano took the sun from the sky, and the harvest failed. Prices went up, and bread was more than folk could afford.
The worst year which was ever recollected. The spring was most severely cold, the snow falling as late as the 7th of June. The autumn was unusually wet, though the harvest throughout England was very bad. And in the highest parts of Derbyshire, the oats were not cut until October, and in many places they were never housed. In Derbyshire, a third of the population were thrown out of employment and became paupers.
The government cut taxes they'd put on the rich during the war, but they did naught for the poor. There were petitions from all over England begging for help, but the government didn't listen. And so we moved into winter in a desperate state. We knew that without the reform of Parliament, so ordinary men could vote, we'd remain oppressed. In London, there were big public meetings at the Spa Fields, where thousands gathered to present a petition to Prince Regent. But it turned nasty when the army dispersed the crowd. And then thousands of people attended in Manchester, each of them carrying a blanket. They were to walk peacefully to London to present their petition, but the first King's Dragoons charged them. They were Waterloo heroes, but they trampled folk and slashed them with sabres. My one-eyed nephew Joseph, we called him Manchester Turner, he was there, and he was beaten up and jailed. I was ashamed of them soldiers. Lord Liverpool's government passed new laws to stop us combining or meeting or reading what they called seditious literature. So we met in secret. And everyone was talking about Paine and Cobbett. Something had to change in this country, and down in London, Major John Cartwright set up the first club to discuss reform of Parliament. He called it the Hampden Club, and soon we had Hampden clubs all over the country, round here as well. There were lots of them in the Midlands where skilled workmen would gather together. Tommy Bacon set up Hampdens everywhere he could. Many joined. We had the Twopenny Trash and another paper called The Black Dwarf, and they helped us to realise that there were thousands who thought as we did. In spring this year, delegates from all the Hampden clubs were summoned to a meeting in London at the Crown and Anchor, and Tommy went. There were many folk there from all over England. Tommy spoke up, demanding a vote for every man. Some there thought they were going too far, but many spoke up for it. After the meeting, Tommy talked with others who believed that the only way to get reform was to actually rise up and overthrow the government. And he came back full of hope. He believed the revolution he was working so hard for so many years might soon begin. Then in May, Tommy went to a meeting in Wakefield, representing all of Derby and Nottingham and Leicester. There were delegates from all over the north, and they spoke of thousands ready to rise up against the government. And that was where he first met the delegate from London, a gentleman called Mr. Oliver. And Oliver said, the rest of us must rise in support of thousands in London who needed our help to overthrow the government. Tommy wrote it all down later.
Mr. Oliver was asked how many thousand London could raise. I answered London could raise 70,000 in 3 or 4 hours' notice, and the printer of the Black Dwarf pamphlet would command them, for he was the cleverest man in London. One of the company asked Oliver if Sir Francis Burdett and Major Cartwright knew of the proceedings. I answered undoubtedly they did. Major Cartwright and Sir Francis Burdett were great friends to the cause. I had been much up and down the country, and the people were all ready.
Well, Tommy came back excited. He told us to prepare for action. So in South Wingfield we began to drill. And guess who was the Sergeant Major? We gathered weapons. We made pikes. Well, I'd known Isaac Ludlam all my life. I watched his family grow. 15 children he had, but half of them died young. Watched him lose his farm, watched him scratching out a living carrying stones from the quarry. Isaac was a lay preacher, a peaceful man who endured his lot without anger. But the only thing that upset him was when he heard of the way the royals were carrying on. The Prince Regent and the Grand Old Duke, drinking, mistresses, spending money like water, and folk like Isaac were hard-pressed. I think that was the main reason he and his lads joined us and made lots of pikes and hid them in the quarry. Meanwhile, Oliver was travelling all over the north, meeting in secret and spreading plans for the rising. He begged everyone to act in support of the thousands who were going to rise in London. He was nearly arrested in Yorkshire, but he got away. He came back to Nottingham at the beginning of June, when many had begun to believe he wasn't what he said he was. He was possibly a government spy, but we couldn't prove it. And the blooming liar was allowed to return to London to report how well the North was preparing. If we'd only known that no one in London knew anything about the rising, even the gentlemen who were supposed to be forming the new government. And then the Yorkshire leaders were arrested a day or two before. Well, we thought Tommy would be leading us on the night of the rising, but a few days before it was going to happen, a new face appeared in his place at Hunt's Barn in Pentridge. He was a dark-haired little man, a stockinger, brought in by Tommy and sent by the Nottingham Committee to lead us Derbyshire lads. Well, we weren't sure about this, but we heard him out. He was a small man and didn't look much in his tatty clothes. But when he opened his mouth, I knew there was a lot more to him. He spoke well. He told us the plan of campaign we'd been waiting to hear about. First, the date, which had been a secret. On the 9th of June, we were to assemble and march to Nottingham. Men from Mansfield, Chesterfield and the Derbyshire villages would join us. We'd meet the Nottingham men at the racecourse and we'd go on to capture the castle. Thousands of others would join us from all over the country. He called them the Northern Clouds. We'd take boats on the Trent, we'd capture Newark, and then on to join the London men to march on Parliament and the Tower. And there'd be a new provisional government led by Sir Francis Burdett. Every man would get 100 guineas, bread, beef, beer and rum in Nottingham. Well, this went down well and got a cheer. I think a lot of folk thought that a provisional government would give us provisions. He told me he'd done some soldiering, 2nd Battalion, 28th Foot, but he'd seen no fighting. and then he asked me to lead the South Wingfield men and to order the march. Of course, I said yes. 2 days later at the White Horse Inn in Pentridge, we talked about weapons. We'd a little powder and a few bullets, but we'd made pikes and spears that were stored at Isaac's quarry, just near South Wingfield. Isaac read out the list. I was of the opinion that we were the most furthest forward of any parish in England in getting weapons together. The captain was pleased, and he asked Isaac to command the rearguard. The plan was to knock up all the farmers in the district and take the guns and men with us on the night of the march, which is now only 2 days away. Well, I had a plan of my own, and I told him about it. Our local landlord, Colonel Wingfield Alton, had evicted some of our neighbours in the middle of the worst winter anyone could remember. God, they had it hard. Well, some of the local lads got angry and set fire to some of his haystacks, and now 4 of them were in Derby jail waiting trial. My plan was to set fire to Halton's door and shoot him when he came out. I called this drawing the badger. But the captain said we'd free the lads when we'd overthrown the government and we'd settle with Halton then. So I had to be quiet. We agreed appointed times and places and we went home to get ready. And the captain had written a story, a poem, to cheer us up.
Oh, every man his skill must try, he must turn out and not deny. No bloody soldier must aid dread, he must turn out and fight for bread. The time has come, you plainly say, the government opposed must pay.
Oh, every man his skill must try, he must turn out and not deny. No bloody soldier must he dread, he must turn out and fight for bread. The time has come, you plainly see, the government opposed must be. We, they grow fat and we grow thin, although they neither toil nor spin, they steal all and leave us naught, their pleasures by our hunger bought. The time has come, you plainly see, the government opposed must be. And every man his skill must try, he must turn out and not deny. No bloody soldier will he dread, he must turn out and fight for bread. The time has come, you plainly see, the government opposed must be. The time has come, you plainly see, the government opposed must be.